Sex education and developmental disabilities. From sexualityandyou.ca. I figured since it was a California website, it must be cutting edge. So I'm going to jump down to here. It says guidelines for teaching sexual health with students with intellectual disabilities. First, it says repeat, repeat, and repeat again. It is important to use repetition. I've heard that before. When teaching youth with intellectual disabilities, you can repeat the same concept from a few different angles to maximize the potential for understanding. Stay concrete with your examples. It says the examples used need to be concrete in the present and almost tangible. Using pictures and videos is a good method. Don't overload with information. Go slower. If you wanted to do 2 sessions of sex ed with a group, then schedule 4 sessions so that you have enough time for the students to process the information. Assume that the students have not had any sex education before unless you know otherwise. Start with the basics. Appreciate that the students are sexual and this may be expressed in various ways. For most students, talking about sex will not encourage them to try it. It will just make them more comfortable and informed on the subject for when the moment happens. Teach the right to refuse. It says people with disabilities can be sometimes trained to be quite compliant. So that could be a problem if somebody is pressuring them. Remember that context is everything. How does the information fit into their real life? Discuss social situations as examples. Help youth to practice appropriate affection with whom and where. Discuss masturbation. It is important that all students understand the concept and value of masturbation unless your values are in conflict with this. Students need to know that this is healthy and natural and is entirely appropriate if they are in the right place, a private place. It says a note about masturbation. It is very important that we prevent sexual behavior such as masturbation or exposure of genitals in public places because this behavior is illegal. And I would add to that in public places is just inappropriate. Often people with ID that masturbate, with ID as intellectual disabilities that masturbate in public are told repeatedly to masturbate in their bedrooms. However, often people with intellectual disabilities cannot get excited or orgasm when they masturbate alone in their bedroom. This is because they may require visual stimulation, especially men, but they do not have the ability to visualize images in their heads. Who wrote this? A simple way to solve this problem is to give images, not necessarily pornography, but images from magazines so that they have a source of stimulation in their bedroom. That's an interesting tip. Could be a little controversial. What do you guys think about that? Leave a comment below. I'd like to get your opinion. Just sharing this information with you. Here it says from the Sexuality Resource Center for Parents. Information about masturbation for parents of children with developmental disabilities. Masturbation is common throughout life, both for men and women. Children masturbate from an early age, although the behavior usually increases during adolescence. Masturbation is a healthy thing for children and adults to do, but many people still feel guilty about masturbating. Masturbation may help relieve sexual tension, provide a sexual outlet for people without partners, be a source of comfort or security to some individuals. It may also be a symptom of non-sexual problems such as frustration, boredom, or loneliness. And here's a list of why excessive masturbation may occur. When there are, here's one: when clothing is too tight, when there is an irritation such as a skin rash, when there is a personal emotional problem, physical disability affects sensitivity to pain or pleasure, when there's an infection, and they go on to give more reasons here. Masturbation may seem excessive because it occurs in inappropriate places. This may happen because an individual has no appropriate place to masturbate, or because he or she hasn't been taught where it is appropriate to masturbate. It says masturbation cannot be ignored when it is done in a public place, when it is done in a private place such as a bedroom, but when other people are around, and when it interferes with daily living. When an individual is rubbing so hard or so often that there is soreness or bleeding, individuals may need to learn the following things. Masturbation should be done in private. It should be a private behavior that should be done alone. Use a sexual lubricant if there is soreness. Clean up after masturbating. Wash hands. Masturbation should be discussed in public places. Shouldn't be discussed in public places with family, friends, or strangers. Masturbation can be discussed in private with a doctor, nurse, parent, or other appropriate person. Dealing with inappropriate masturbation. Is this an issue? Anybody that you know? Be clear about your rules. Respond to inappropriate masturbation in a calm, non-judgmental manner. Use clear language. For example, it's not okay to masturbate here. You can do that in the bathroom. If possible, coordinate the message given at home and at school or work so that you and all school or work staff are given consistent messages. Look for possible causes if the inappropriate behavior persists. Behavior modification techniques can be applied to inappropriate masturbation. Use techniques that have worked in the past for other problem behaviors, like encouraging other incompatible behaviors. Your child won't be able to masturbate if their hands are busy doing something else. So sign them up for swim lessons, I guess. Reward appropriate behavior or the absence of inappropriate behavior. Extinguish attention-getting behavior by ignoring it or calmly redirecting your child. And it says masturbation is usually pleasurable and may be impossible to eliminate completely. Yeah, I can see that. Teaching appropriate places and times for masturbation and ensuring that there are such places and times in your child's life is usually more effective than trying to eliminate the behavior completely. Okay. And finally, I have from the same website, Sexuality Resource Center for Parents, I have an article, Marriage, Long-Term Relationships, and Having Children for Parents of Children with Developmental Disabilities. It says, not all children with developmental disabilities grow up and get married or enter into long-term relationships, and not all couples with developmental disabilities have children, but if marriage, a long-term relationship, or having children sound like distinct possibilities for your older child, then you might want to read this article. I did read this article. It had some kind of interesting things to think about that might come up. It says there's legal aspects. Is it legal for a person with a developmental disability to get married? You won't find the answer in our Constitution or in the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's because matters of marriage are handled on the state level. As a general rule, though, people with developmental disabilities have the same right to be married as anyone else. But that right can be taken away if a court determines that a person is incapable of entering into a marriage contract. Is it legal for a person with developmental disabilities to have children? Yes, but states have laws that can limit the parental rights of people with developmental disabilities. It says, in 32 states, a parent's developmental disability can be one of the grounds for termination of parental rights. Although recent research has shown that parents with disabilities are not more likely to maltreat their children than parents without disabilities, studies have found very high rates of termination of the rights of parents with disabilities. Both the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act prohibit state and local government from discriminating against people with disabilities in their programs and services. However, one area that these anti-discrimination laws do not cover is child custody and child protection proceedings. And many parents with disabilities still face discrimination in these areas, in these arenas. Partners. We think your child should be with someone they love. It doesn't matter if your child finds someone with a disability or without a disability. What does matter is that there is equality in your child's relationship with their partner. And that's where your responsibility lies, making sure that the person your child has chosen will treat your child right. If your child chooses poorly, then you've got yourself a real predicament. Trying to convince your child that they've fallen in love with the wrong person? Don't do this alone. Yeah, that seems like an issue that you might face with or without disabilities coming into play. Enlist the support of everyone else your child respects and trusts, and try to figure out as many ways as possible to get your point across. In the end, you may just have to take legal steps to prevent the marriage. Wow. Wow, it sounds like a lot of drama there. I don't know. If your child chooses a good person, then take advantage of community and government resources that will allow them to live on their own, either in an assisted or unassisted living situation. And then it goes on to talk about heredity. If your older child is married and considering parenthood, there's probably one big question they're desperate to know the answer to. Will my child have the same disability as me? The answer depends upon your child's disability. And then it goes on to talk about some common disabilities here. In most cases of Down syndrome, it's not inherited. More than 90% of cases of Down syndrome are caused by trisomy 21, a non-hereditary condition. Mosaic Down syndrome is also not inherited. It goes on. Fragile X, Klinefelter syndrome, congenital hypothyroidism, Williams syndrome, Prader-Willi, autism. Scientists don't know exactly what causes autism spectrum disorder, though much evidence supports the idea that hereditary factors are one of the causes. Current evidence suggests that as many as 12 or more genes may be involved in autism to different degrees. Some genes may place a person at greater risk for autism, while other genes may cause specific symptoms or determine how severe these symptoms are. It goes on, resources and help. So that's all I got for to review right now about sex and people with developmental disabilities. But there's a ton of information online, and all you got to do is Google that, and you'll find endless amounts of information, usually from slightly different perspectives. So that it's all out there. So I'd love to hear your comments. Leave them down below, and please share and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.